My father didn't whisper it. He didn't hesitate. At exactly 12:03 a.m. on Christmas Eve, he screamed, "Just get out!" And the worst part wasn't the yelling. It was that my mother locked the door behind me like she'd been waiting for permission. I stood barefoot in the snow, phone vibrating in my hand, knowing one thing with terrifying clarity. They had forgotten the video existed. Christmas lights still blinked behind the frosted windows as if nothing had happened. Red, green, gold, cheerful, mocking. Inside, my family was rearranging their faces, already preparing the version of the story they'd tell tomorrow. Outside, my breath came out in short, panicked clouds. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because this wasn't the first time my father had thrown me out. It was just the first time he'd done it at midnight, on Christmas, after threatening me in a voice I'd never heard before. "You think you're smart?" he'd said minutes earlier, his face inches from mine, breath thick with whiskey and rage. "You think you can embarrass us?" I hadn't answered. I was too busy realizing that he was afraid. Let me rewind to earlier that evening. Before the shouting, before the door slammed, before the snow burned my feet, Christmas dinner had been perfect. Too perfect. The table looked like something out of a magazine. Candles aligned, plates warmed, my mother's laugh light and practiced, my sister playing hostess, refilling glasses like she owned the place, my father carving the turkey, smiling at everyone except me. I noticed it immediately. He never looked at me directly anymore. Not since October. Not since the night I recorded the video. "Smile," my mother whispered as she passed behind me, fingers pressing into my shoulder just a little too hard. "It's Christmas." So I smiled. I smiled knowing my phone, currently charging upstairs, contained a video that could destroy everything they were pretending to protect. A video they believed was gone forever. Dinner conversation floated around me like background noise. My sister bragged about her promotion. My mother talked about church donations. My father toasted family loyalty. I almost laughed, because family loyalty was exactly what he broke the night I pressed record. That night replayed in my head like a warning siren. October, 11:48 p.m. I'd come home early, too early. I heard shouting from the study, my father's voice sharp, my mother's low and frantic, my name mentioned once, then again. I should have walked away. Instead, I lifted my phone. Back at Christmas dinner, my father finally looked at me. His eyes narrowed, not angry, calculating. "You've been quiet," he said casually. "Everything okay?" Every muscle in my body screamed don't answer, but silence would have been worse. "Just tired," I said. His jaw tightened. He knew that tone. The room felt smaller. The candles flickered. Somewhere upstairs, my phone finished charging. After dessert, gifts were exchanged like weapons disguised as generosity. My sister handed me a scarf, cheap, rushed, impersonal. My mother kissed my cheek too close to my ear. "You're lucky to have us," she whispered. I almost told her the truth right then. Almost, but timing matters when you're about to detonate something. It happened just after midnight. My father asked me to help him in the garage. That's when I knew. He didn't yell at first. He closed the door, slowly, carefully, like he didn't want the house to hear. "You think you can hold things over us?" he said quietly. My stomach dropped, so he did remember. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. That's when his hand slammed into the workbench. "Don't lie to me." His face twisted, not into rage, but panic. The kind of panic people feel when their secrets start breathing. My mother appeared behind him. Then my sister, a triangle, no exits. "You delete it," my mother said softly. "Right now." That's when I understood something chilling. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of what I had proof of. The argument escalated fast. Words overlapped. Accusations flew. My sister cried on cue. My father's voice rose until it cracked the air. And then midnight, Christmas. "Just get out," he screamed. "Get out of my house?" I laughed. That's what pushed him over the edge. The door slammed. The lock turned. And suddenly I was outside. Snow soaked into my skin as my phone buzzed again. A notification. "Grandma, just one message." "Did you show them the video?" I stared at the screen, heart pounding. No, not yet. And as I looked back at the glowing house, listening to Christmas music drift faintly through the walls, I realized something powerful. They still thought they could control the ending. They were wrong. I could have left. I should have left. But when your own parents throw you into the snow on Christmas, something inside you stops running and starts keeping score. I stood there for a full minute after the door locked. Not because I didn't know where to go, but because I wanted to remember the sound of it. The click, the finality, the way 30 years of family ended with a deadbolt. My phone buzzed again in my frozen hand. Another message from Grandma. Good, don't show it yet. That was when I knew this wasn't just my secret anymore. This was a plan. I walked down the driveway barefoot, each step biting like punishment. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, decorated with wreaths and reindeer and inflatable Santas smiling like idiots. Somewhere a family was laughing. Somewhere else, someone was opening gifts early. I called the only place I could. Grandma, I whispered the second she picked up. Her voice was calm, too calm. Did he lock the door? Yes. Did he threaten you? Yes. She exhaled slowly, then listened to me carefully. I stopped walking. Go to the old shed behind the cedar trees, she said. The one your father hates. My stomach tightened. Why? Because, she said, that's where the truth always hides in this family. The shed hadn't been opened in years. My father called it junk. Useless memories. Evidence of a past he pretended didn't exist. I shoved the door open and stepped inside, shaking, breath ragged, teeth chattering. It smelled like dust and oil and time. Sit down, Grandma said through the phone, and breathe. I slid down against the wall, pulling my knees to my chest. My hands were numb. My heart was racing. This ends tonight, she said. But only if you do exactly what I say. I swallowed. They're going to lie about me. I know. They always do. I know, she repeated. That's why we kept the video. My mind flashed back again, October. The night everything changed. I'd forgotten my charger and came back home quietly. The house lights were off except for the study. Voices leaked through the door. Angry, urgent, my name again. You think they won't find out? My mother hissed. They won't, my father said. Not unless she talks. That's when I started recording. I didn't even know what I was recording yet. Just instinct, survival, something in me screaming that this mattered. What I captured was worse than I imagined. Back in the shed, Grandma continued. You're not going back inside tonight, she said. And that's good. Good, I laughed bitterly. I'm homeless. No, she said firmly. You're protected. I frowned. From what? She hesitated, just a second too long. Grandma, I said slowly. What aren't you telling me? Silence. Then, your father didn't just yell because he was angry. My blood ran cold. He yelled, she said, because he realized he was losing control. The shed light flickered as I plugged in my phone. My hands shook as I opened the video folder. The file sat there, innocent-looking, date-stamped, untouched. I hadn't watched it in weeks. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the tiny space. Clear, unfiltered, unmistakable. We move the money before she graduates. She doesn't need to know. If she asks questions, you handle it. My mother's voice followed, nervous, complicit. And if she doesn't drop it? A pause, then my father again. Then she doesn't get Christmas or anything else. My chest tightened. I remembered how my grandmother had walked into that room midway through the argument. How my father froze when he saw her. How she'd said nothing, just looked at me, at my phone, and nodded once. She'd known. Grandma, I whispered into the phone. He knows I have it. Yes, she said, but he doesn't know where. A car engine started nearby. My head snapped up. Headlights swept across the shed window. My father's SUV. My pulse spiked. He's coming. Good, Grandma said calmly. That means the pressure is working. What if he takes my phone? He won't, she said, because you're not alone. The shed door handle rattled. My father's voice cut through the night. Come out, he said. We need to talk. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Do not open that door, Grandma said sharply. Not yet. Why? Because, she said, her voice suddenly steel. He hasn't cried yet. The handle rattled again. Harder. Open the door, my father snapped. You're embarrassing yourself. I stared at the video file on my screen. My finger hovered over send. One tap and everything would burn. Another tap and Christmas would never be the same. I whispered into the phone, Are you sure? Grandma didn't hesitate. Yes. Why now? Because, she said softly, this is the night the truth stops waiting. The door banged again. And I realized Whatever I did next would destroy my family forever. I didn't send the video. Not yet. Because the most dangerous moment in any family isn't when the truth comes out, it's when someone realizes they can still stop it. My father stepped away from the shed door. I could hear his boots crunching in the snow, slow and deliberate, circling like he was deciding which version of himself to use next. Angry father. Pleading father. Or the one I'd only seen once before, the one who scared my grandmother into silence. "Come on," he called, voice suddenly softer. "It's freezing, let's talk like adults." My stomach twisted. He never said talk unless he planned to rewrite reality. "Stay still," Grandma whispered through the phone. "Let him speak." I hugged my knees tighter, trying to make myself smaller, quieter. The shed felt like it was breathing with me. Every sound was louder, every second stretched. "You've always been dramatic," my father continued. "Always recording, always watching. You think that makes you powerful?" I clenched my jaw. "You don't even understand what you recorded," he said. "You think you do, but you don't." My pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" I asked before I could stop myself. The words slipped out like a crack in a dam. Silence. Then my father smiled. I could hear it in his voice. "There you are," he said. "I knew you were listening." Grandma inhaled sharply. "That's enough, say nothing now." But it was too late. My father walked back to the door. This time he didn't knock. "You really want to do this?" he asked quietly. "On Christmas." I stared at the video file again. "Tell me," he said, "what do you think people will believe?" I swallowed. "You," he continued, "or two respected parents with decades of reputation?" My hands shook. "This doesn't end how you think it does," he said. "It ends with you alone." I remembered another night, years ago. I was 16. I'd confronted him about money missing from my college fund. He'd laughed. Then he'd grounded me for accusing him. Everyone believed him. Everyone always did. "That video doesn't show the full context," my father said. "And context is everything." He wasn't wrong. Truth without witnesses is just noise. "Open the door," he said. "Let's fix this." Grandma's voice was low but firm. "He's lying and he's desperate." "I know," I whispered. "But do you know why?" she asked. I hesitated. "Because of the money?" "No," she said. "Because of the timing." Snow crunched again. Another set of footsteps approached. My sister's voice cut through the dark. "Please," she said. "Just come inside, Mom's crying." Of course she was. She always cried when things didn't go her way. "You're ruining Christmas," my sister added. "Do you really want to be that person?" I almost laughed. They'd already decided who I was. "Listen carefully," Grandma said. "Your father needs you silent until morning." "Why morning?" "Because Christmas Day means guests," she said. "And guests mean witnesses." My eyes widened. "They're planning to control the narrative," she continued. "By morning, you'll be the unstable one, the liar, the problem." My chest tightened. "So what do I do?" "Wait," she said. "And let him make a mistake." The shed door suddenly flew open. Cold air rushed in. My father stood there, face flushed, eyes wild, not with rage but fear. He reached for my phone. I moved faster. I stepped back. He froze. And that's when he said the thing that changed everything. "You think Grandma's protecting you?" he sneered. "She already knows what happens if this gets out." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" I asked. He smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Ask her," he said softly. "Ask her what really happened the last time someone exposed this family." The door slammed shut behind him. Locked, I stared at my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Grandma," I whispered. "What did he mean?" She didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "Because," she said quietly, "the last time someone tried it, they didn't make it to Christmas." My heart stopped. When my grandmother said that, my first thought wasn't fear. It was memory. A memory no one ever talked about, but everyone avoided. The shed felt smaller after her words, like the walls had leaned in to listen. "Grandma," I said slowly, "who didn't make it?" She exhaled, long, heavy. "Your uncle," she said. "My eldest son." The name hit me like a punch to the chest. Uncle David, the man whose photos were never displayed. The man whose room was always under renovation. The man my father referred to as a mistake. "He died in a car accident," I whispered. "That's what I'd been told my whole life." "That's what your father tells people," Grandma said. "Because it's close enough to the truth to survive." My hands went cold. Snow drifted in through a crack in the shed door. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. Laughter echoed faintly from a neighbor's house. Christmas continued without me. What really happened? I asked. Grandma hesitated again. Then, David recorded something too. My stomach dropped. He found out about the money, the transfers, the way your father used family names to move it. He thought exposing it would protect everyone. And your father thought silencing him would. My chest felt tight, hard to breathe. He confronted your father, she continued, just like you did. And 2 weeks later, his brakes failed. I pressed my hand over my mouth. Police ruled it an accident, Grandma said, because they never looked hard enough. Because no one pushed them to, I whispered. Yes, the pieces started clicking together. The fear, the control, the obsession with reputation. This wasn't about embarrassment. This was about survival. The shed door rattled again. This time, it wasn't my father. My mother's voice slid through the wood like a blade wrapped in silk. Sweetheart, she said gently, you're scaring us. I laughed bitterly. You locked me out in the snow, I said. On Christmas. That was your father, she replied quickly. You know how he gets. Classic. He just needs time to cool down, she continued. Come inside, we'll talk. Grandma hissed through the phone, do not go with her. Why? I whispered. Because, she said, your mother is better at lying than your father is. My mother knocked softly now. I know you're hurt, she said, but think about the consequences. There it was. If you release that video, she continued, you'll destroy your sister's future, your father's career, everything we built. My jaw tightened. You built it on lies, I said. Silence. Then her voice hardened. You don't know the full story. I almost laughed again. You always say that, I said, but somehow the full story never changes. I checked my phone battery. 42%, not enough for a long war. Grandma, I whispered, what do I do? You don't send the video yet, she said. You make copies. My eyes widened. Email it to me, upload it to a private cloud, schedule it. My pulse raced. Schedule it? Yes, she said. So even if they take your phone, the truth still comes out? The realization hit me like lightning. Control, that's what my father feared losing. I worked fast, fingers numb, heart racing. Upload, confirm, schedule. The progress bar crawled. Outside, my parents whispered to each other. I could hear my name. My mother crying again, real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. Done, I whispered. Good, Grandma said. Now listen carefully. The shed door handle turned slowly. Click, unlocked. That was your father, Grandma said. Testing you, my heart hammered. What now? I asked. Now, she said, you walk back inside. What? You let them think they won. The door creaked open. Warm light spilled onto the snow. My father stood there, expression unreadable. Ready to come inside? He asked. I looked at the house, at the lights, the decorations, the illusion, and for the first time I wasn't afraid. Because the truth was already moving. I stepped forward. The most dangerous moment wasn't when I walked back inside. It was when my father smiled, because that's how I knew he thought he'd won. The warmth of the house hit me like a lie. Heat, cinnamon, pine, normalcy. My mother rushed forward, wrapping me in a hug that felt more like a restraint than comfort. Oh, thank God, she whispered loudly. You scared us. I didn't respond. My sister stood near the tree, arms folded, eyes red, but sharp. Always sharp. She was watching my hands, my pockets, my phone. My father closed the door behind me and locked it. Click, a sound I'd heard too many times. Let's all calm down, he said, voice suddenly reasonable. We said things we didn't mean. Classic reset. He poured himself a drink, hands steady again. Control restored, at least in his mind. You're staying tonight, my mother said quickly. It's too late to go anywhere. I nodded. I did exactly what they wanted. Because Grandma was right. You don't expose a monster while it still thinks you're cornered. We sat in the living room like actors waiting for cues. The Christmas tree glowed between us, ornaments reflecting distorted versions of our faces. My father spoke first. We've always done our best for you, he said. You know that? I watched the fire crackle. You've had a hard year, my mother added. Graduation stress, big emotions. Gaslighting, textbook, my sister sighed. We just want peace. I almost laughed. My phone vibrated once. A message. Grandma, Good, they're comfortable. That's when people slip. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. My father leaned forward. About that video, he said carefully. We should talk. Here it comes. I deleted it, I lied. The air shifted. My mother exhaled in relief. My sister relaxed visibly. My father nodded slowly, pretending this was expected. Good, he said. That was the right choice. He raised his glass. To family, he said. I didn't lift mine. Time passed strangely after that. Conversation returned, laughter even. They wanted me to believe we were past it, but I noticed everything now. How my father kept positioning himself between me and the door. How my sister kept checking my pockets with her eyes. How my mother watched my face, waiting for cracks. At 1:47 a.m., my father stood. Let's all get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's a big day. Christmas Day, witnesses. He looked at me. You'll sleep in your old room. Not a suggestion. The hallway felt longer than I remembered. My room looked untouched, preserved, like a museum exhibit of who I used to be. My mother stood in the doorway. I'm glad you came back inside, she said softly. I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you. I met her eyes. Neither do I said. She flinched. The door closed, but it didn't lock. That surprised me. I sat on the bed, fully dressed, phone hidden under the pillow, heart racing. Every sound made me tense. Footsteps, whispers, the hum of the house settling. Then, just after 2:30 a.m., my door opened. My father stepped inside, alone. He closed the door behind him. He didn't yell. That was worse. You really scared me tonight, he said quietly. Do you know that? I stayed silent. I thought about your uncle, he continued. About how things got messy. My blood ran cold. You don't want things to get messy, he said, stepping closer. I held his gaze. I already sent it, I said. The lie landed like a grenade. His face drained of color. What? He whispered. Copies, I added. Scheduled. His hand trembled. You're bluffing, he said. Check your email, I replied calmly. He didn't move. That's when I knew for the first time in his life he was afraid. He left without another word. At 6:12 a.m., I heard the front door open. Then slam. Then silence. And I realized something chilling. Christmas morning was about to begin, and my father was running out of time. Christmas morning didn't start with gifts. It started with silence. The kind that means someone is already planning damage control. I woke to the smell of coffee and panic. Not the warm, comforting kind, the sharp, burnt edge of something left too long on the burner because no one was paying attention. My phone buzzed under the pillow. Grandma. He left early. That's bad for him. Good for us. I sat up slowly, listening. No Christmas music, no cheerful chatter, just footsteps pacing the kitchen. I didn't rush downstairs. That was important. People who rush look guilty. People who move slowly look confident. When I finally entered the kitchen, my mother nearly jumped out of her skin. Oh, good morning, she said too brightly. My sister sat at the table, scrolling furiously on her phone, jaw clenched. My father's chair was empty. Where's Dad? I asked casually. My mother smiled without teeth. He had an early meeting. On Christmas, sure, I poured myself coffee. No one stopped me. That alone told me everything. My father never missed Christmas morning. Never. It was his stage, his proof that the family was perfect. If he was gone, it meant he was scared of what the morning might bring. My phone buzzed again. Grandma. He's calling people, trying to get ahead of the story. I sipped my coffee. What story? My sister snapped suddenly. I looked at her. She looked rattled, not angry, not smug, afraid. Nothing, I said. Why? She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at my mother. My mother's hand tightened around her mug. At 9:03 a.m., the doorbell rang. My heart skipped. Guests, witnesses, my mother froze. My sister shot to her feet. I'll get it, my mother said quickly, too quickly. But I was already moving. No, I said calmly. I will. She hesitated. That hesitation cost her control. I opened the door. My grandparents stood on the porch, both of them. My grandmother met my eyes and smiled. A real smile. Merry Christmas, she said. Behind her, my grandfather's jaw was set hard. They hadn't come for celebration, they'd come for reckoning. The room shifted the moment Grandma stepped inside. My mother stiffened. My sister went pale. Elaine, Grandma said pleasantly. You look tired. My mother swallowed. It was a long night. Yes, Grandma replied. I heard. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. For the first time, I wasn't the smallest person in the room. More guests arrived, aunts, uncles, cousins. Christmas filled the house like an unstoppable force, and with every new arrival, my father's absence grew louder. "Where's Grant?" someone finally asked. My mother opened her mouth. Grandma spoke first. "He's handling a mess he made," she said calmly. The room went quiet. Forks paused midair. Eyes turned. My sister stood abruptly. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Grandma said. She turned to me. "Did you bring your phone?" I nodded. My heart started pounding. "This ends now," she said. My mother's face drained of color. "You wouldn't," she whispered. Grandma looked at her coldly. "I already did," she said. My phone buzzed. A notification appeared. Scheduled upload, sent the timestamp glowed on the screen. 10 o'clock m Christmas Day. My sister gasped. My mother grabbed the counter to steady herself. "What did you do?" she whispered. I met her eyes. "I told the truth," I said. At that exact moment, my father burst through the front door. Pale, sweating, eyes wild. "Stop!" he shouted. Every head turned. Too late. Phones began buzzing around the room. One by one, messages, alerts, emails. My father looked around at his family, at the witnesses, at my grandmother. And then, he started to cry. I'd waited my whole life to see my father cry. I just never expected it to happen in front of everyone he'd spent decades manipulating. The room was silent except for the soft buzz of phones lighting up one by one. My father stood in the doorway, shoulders hunched, eyes glassy, like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was gone. "What did you send?" my aunt whispered. My father didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the truth had already escaped him. My grandmother took a single step forward. "Grant," she said calmly, "you should sit down." He didn't. He stared at me instead. "You ruined us," he said hoarsely. I shook my head. "You ruined yourselves." That was when he lost it. His knees buckled. He collapsed into the chair by the wall, burying his face in his hands. The image burned itself into my memory, not because it was satisfying, but because it was final. This wasn't anger, this was exposure. People began watching the video, right there. Christmas ornaments reflected shock, horror, disbelief. My uncle cursed under his breath. My aunt covered her mouth. My cousin whispered, "Oh my God." My mother stood frozen, eyes darting, calculating how to survive this version of reality. My sister shook her head over and over. "This is fake," she muttered. "This has to be fake." No one agreed with her. My grandmother spoke again. "David tried to stop this," she said. Every head turned. "He recorded something similar years ago," she continued. "And 2 weeks later he was dead." A sharp inhale swept through the room. My father looked up slowly. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't what?" Grandma asked. "Tell the truth," my mother finally snapped. "You don't know everything," she screamed. "You never have." Grandma turned to her. "I know enough," she said. "And so does the police." The room erupted. "The police?" my sister shrieked. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. "Grandma," I whispered. She met my eyes. "I called them this morning." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Closer, my father stood suddenly, panic surging back into him. "You did this," he said to me, pointing. "You planned this." I didn't deny it. "Yes," I said, "I did." His face twisted. "You're dead to me." I laughed. "No," I replied. "I'm finally free." The doorbell rang. This time no one moved to stop it. 2 officers stood on the porch. "Grant Hale?" one asked. My father sagged. "Yes," he whispered. "You need to come with us," the officer said. "We have some questions." My mother screamed. My sister collapsed onto the couch. My father looked at my grandmother one last time. "You always chose them," he said bitterly. She nodded. "Because they told the truth." As they led him away, I felt something unexpected. Not victory, relief. Years of fear drained out of me with every step he took toward the car. Later that evening, after the house emptied and the lights dimmed, my grandmother sat beside me. "You did well," she said. "I was terrified," I admitted. She smiled softly. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting anyway." I looked at the dark window. "Is it really over?" She squeezed my hand. "For him," she said. "Yes," I nodded, but somewhere deep inside I knew one thing: this story wasn't finished yet. Everyone thinks the story ends when the police take someone away. It doesn't. That's just when the real consequences begin. The house felt hollow once the patrol cars disappeared down the street. Wrapping paper lay torn and forgotten. Half-drunk mugs of coffee sat cold on the counter. Christmas had been canceled, not with anger, but with truth. My mother sat at the dining table, staring at nothing. My sister locked herself in the bathroom. And for the first time in my life, no one was telling me what to do. I helped my grandmother into the living room. She moved slower now, the adrenaline fading, but her eyes were clear. Focused. "You should leave tonight," she said quietly. I blinked. "Leave?" "Yes," she replied. "Not because you're unsafe, because you deserve distance." I nodded slowly. Distance sounded like oxygen. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages poured in. Family, friends, strangers. Some offered support. Others asked questions they had no right to ask. A few accused me of betrayal. I ignored most of them. Then one message stopped me cold. "Unknown number. You don't know what you've started." My pulse jumped. I showed it to Grandma. She read it once, then again, her jaw tightened. "He has allies," she said. "He always did." That night I packed quietly. No one stopped me. My mother watched from the doorway of the kitchen, eyes hollow. "You could have handled this privately," she said weakly. I met her gaze. "You had years to handle it," I replied. She looked away. As I zipped my suitcase, memories flooded back. Birthdays controlled, holidays staged, love conditional. All of it built on silence. I walked out the front door just before sunset. This time, no one locked it behind me. Grandma drove me to her place. The ride was quiet. At a red light, she finally spoke. "He'll try to rewrite this," she said. "He always does." "Will it work?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not with evidence." I exhaled. For the first time, my future didn't feel like a negotiation. 2 days later, the news broke. Headlines, investigations, financial audits. The video had gone further than I expected. My father's accounts were frozen. My mother was questioned. My sister went silent online. And then another message. This one from my sister. I never knew it would go this far. I stared at the screen. Neither did I didn't reply. Some bridges burn because they were built over lies. That night, as snow fell softly outside my grandmother's house, she sat beside me with a blanket. "Do you regret it?" she asked. I thought about the shed, the snow, the lock turning. "No," I said, "but I'm scared." She nodded. "That's normal." "What happens now?" She smiled faintly. "Now," she said, "we make sure he can never hurt anyone again." My phone buzzed. Another notification. Court summons issued. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a family story anymore. It was becoming a public one, and I was about to be called to testify. Testifying against your own father is supposed to be terrifying, but nothing prepared me for the look on my mother's face when she realized I would speak the truth, publicly, under oath. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Reporters whispered outside, cameras flashing intermittently, capturing the tension of every arrival. I felt exposed, but also powerful. Grandma squeezed my hand as we walked up the steps. "Remember," she said softly, "they can try to intimidate you, but facts don't lie." I nodded, swallowing hard. Facts and evidence, my video. Inside, the room was sterile. Lawyers moved like chess pieces. The prosecutor was calm but efficient, flipping through documents as if they were weapons. My father and mother sat across the room, masks carefully placed, eyes calculating. My sister hovered behind them, pale and silent, gripping her phone like a shield. I could feel the tension buzzing, ready to snap. "Miss Hale?" the prosecutor called. I rose. The first questions were easy. Name, age, relationship. Then the harder ones began. "When did you record the video?" the prosecutor asked. I answered clearly. "And why?" "To protect myself," I said, "and to reveal illegal actions that could have harmed other family members." My father's jaw tightened. He looked like he might explode, but he said nothing. Then came the moment I feared most. "Did your father threaten you?" the lawyer asked, voice low but steady. I froze. "Several times," I said. "Most recently on Christmas Eve." The courtroom murmured softly. My father's face paled. My mother's fingers tightened around her notebook. I pressed play on my tablet. The video displayed on the screen. The room fell silent. My father's voice, my mother's whispers, the evidence of years of manipulation, all projected before everyone. Friends, family, strangers, even distant relatives who had come to witness the trial. Gasps echoed. Heads turned. Whispers spread. My sister covered her mouth, tears brimming. My father's eyes were wide, panic rising in real time. This is, he stammered, unable to find words. The prosecutor paused, letting the video speak louder than any testimony. When it ended, the silence lingered, heavy, crushing. I felt Grandma's hand squeeze mine again. You did it, she whispered. I nodded. Then my father spoke. You don't understand, he said shakily. I did it for the family. For all of you. The courtroom didn't react. People weren't on his side. Even my mother's eyes betrayed fear, not support. The prosecutor leaned in. Forcing deception isn't for the family, it's a crime. And the evidence shows intent. My father sank lower in his seat. The next hours blurred together. Testimony after testimony. Lawyers asked questions. Relatives whispered. My grandmother took notes. My heart pounded each time my father tried to interrupt. But every time the evidence and my voice held. I saw it in the jurors' eyes. Disbelief, sympathy, recognition. Truth was finally shining on a story that had lived in darkness for decades. By the afternoon, the judge cleared the courtroom for a brief recess. I stepped outside into the cold air. Reporters' cameras flashed as I walked by. Miss Hale, are you okay? One asked. I nodded slowly. Yes, finally, yes. When I returned, my father had his head in his hands. My mother avoided my gaze. My sister sat quietly. The family's perfect facade had cracked, and the crack was now a canyon. Grandma leaned over. You've done more than protect yourself. You've protected everyone else from him. I swallowed. Even if it destroys Christmas forever, she smiled faintly. Truth is timeless, lies aren't. The trial was far from over. But in that moment, as the courtroom buzzed with whispered reactions, I realized one thing. I wasn't the scared child outside the shed anymore. I was the person who finally held the power. By the time the trial resumed, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. My father had no plan for what would happen after the truth came out. He had controlled everything for decades, except now, the strings had slipped from his hands. The courtroom was tense. My father's every movement was calculated, his eyes darting to my grandmother, my sister, even the jurors, as if trying to find a secret ally. But there was none. The prosecutor clicked on a folder. Next, we present financial records corroborating the video. My father swallowed hard. His confident mask began cracking. The evidence was damning. Bank statements, transfers, forged signatures, manipulation of wills, it all lined up with the footage I recorded months ago. My mother flinched as each file flashed on the screen. This can't be real, she whispered, voice trembling. I ignored her. I had done my part. My sister's face went pale. Why didn't you tell us sooner? She whispered to me. I shook my head slightly. Because you wouldn't have believed it, and because it had to be undeniable. The jurors leaned forward as the prosecutor continued. Miss Hale, were there threats made against you? He asked again, formally. Yes, I said. On Christmas Eve, he threw me out into the snow, screaming at me. My father winced, leaning back in his chair. My mother gasped. My sister's hands clenched her phone. And how did you respond? The prosecutor asked. I recorded it, I said simply, and I took steps to ensure the truth would be exposed. Silence fell. Then the unexpected happened. The judge called my father forward. Mr. Hale, would you like to respond? He rose shakily. I was trying to protect the family, he said, voice breaking. The courtroom murmured. I didn't think. You didn't think? The prosecutor cut in sharply. You threatened your own child, lied about finances, and attempted to manipulate everyone around you. And you call this protection? My father's hands trembled. I saw a man unraveling for the first time in my life. After hours of testimony, it was clear. The truth was irreversible. My grandmother leaned over. You did everything right. Stay calm. Let them see it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The final testimony came from my grandmother. She spoke about patterns of control, manipulation, and fear my father had enforced for years. Even my mother didn't contradict her. When the judge finally recessed for the day, the family gathered outside. I watched my father slump into the car. Tears streaked down his face. Real tears this time. This is worse than Christmas, my sister whispered. Yes, I said softly. For him. My grandmother patted my shoulder. For everyone else, it's the beginning of freedom. That night, I sat by the window, reflecting on everything: the video, the snow, the midnight confrontation, the courtroom. For the first time in years, I felt a strange peace. I had fought fear with truth, lies with evidence, and manipulation with courage. And I knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, Christmas morning, felt surreal. The house was quiet. The tree lights still blinked, but the joy was gone. Not because it had been stolen, but because the truth had swept through like a storm, and nothing could pretend anymore. I walked into the kitchen. My mother sat silently at the table, staring at the coffee cup she didn't drink. My sister avoided eye contact, scrolling on her phone as if the world outside could protect her from reality. And my father? Gone. Taken into custody overnight. Grandma followed me into the living room. She wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "They'll come to terms," she said quietly. "But you'll never forget this Christmas." I nodded. I wouldn't. Every step, every look, every scream had carved itself into memory. Then Grandma smiled faintly. "And that's why the video had to be shared. Not to punish, but to protect. From now on, there's no hiding." Her words sank deep. She was right. The guests arrived later, oblivious to the storm that had passed. Aunts and uncles exchanged greetings. Cousins laughed over gifts. But I knew, just as my grandmother had said, there were now invisible lines in the family. Truth had redrawn the boundaries. No one could touch me the way they once did. Not now. My mother approached me eventually. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. I never wanted it to get this far." I looked at her steadily. "You chose silence over honesty for decades. You helped him manipulate us all." Tears formed in her eyes. "I thought I was protecting you." I shook my head. "You were protecting yourself." Silence followed. My sister finally looked up. Her voice small. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much was happening behind the scenes." I nodded. "It's not too late to start being honest, but don't expect me to pretend anymore." She swallowed. "I understand." For the first time, I felt something I hadn't in years: the possibility of real connection, without lies, without fear. Grandma patted my hand. "It's time to celebrate the real Christmas. Not the one they built on control, but the one we choose now." I smiled faintly. "A Christmas without him." "Yes," she said, "a Christmas where truth finally wins." Later, I looked at my phone. Emails confirming that the video had reached the right authorities. Notifications from journalists. Messages from friends expressing shock and support. The world had seen my family the way it really was. My father had wept. My mother had faltered. My sister had begun to see the truth, and I had finally reclaimed my voice. That night, snow fell gently outside the window. The lights of the Christmas tree reflected softly on the floor. For the first time in years, I felt warmth that wasn't forced. I realized something profound. The power of truth isn't in revenge, it's in liberation. And as I sat there, surrounded by the quiet hum of a house that no longer held fear over me, I whispered softly to myself, "Merry Christmas and finally freedom." Even after the truth was exposed, even after the courtroom, even after my father's tears, the story didn't end. Because when a family has been built on lies for decades, the fallout is only beginning. The days after Christmas were tense. The house, though peaceful, felt like a minefield. Every glance, every word carried weight. My mother avoided me. My sister kept her distance. And my grandmother, she was the only one who seemed calm, almost untouchable. "You've done well," she said one morning as I sipped coffee in her kitchen. "But remember, the hardest battles come after the storm." I nodded. "I understand." But did I? I had no idea the depth of what was coming next. The news coverage escalated. Social media exploded with the video, interviews, and public reactions. People were horrified. Some expressed sympathy for me, some condemned my parents, a few debated morality. Through it all, I stayed quiet, observing, waiting. My grandmother was right. The hardest part wasn't showing the truth, it was dealing with the consequences. The police investigation deepened. My father's associates were questioned. Financial institutions froze accounts. Lawyers combed through contracts and wills. The family empire began crumbling in ways I had only imagined in nightmares. My mother tried to call me multiple times. I ignored most of them. I wasn't angry, just detached. I had seen what silence and compliance could cost a family. I wouldn't repeat that mistake. My sister finally approached me, alone, in the living room one evening. I don't know how to act around you, she admitted quietly. I looked at her. Start with honesty, I said. She hesitated. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I nodded. That's understandable, but fear doesn't excuse complicity. Her eyes welled up. I just want things to be normal again. I shook my head gently. Normal isn't coming back. But truth can be the foundation for something better. Grandma smiled faintly from the doorway. Good, you're both learning. That's what matters. Her presence was grounding, strong. She'd orchestrated the exposure, protected me through the chaos, and now guided me toward the next steps. One night I received a call from a journalist. They want to interview you, she said. About the family, the video, everything. I paused. I hadn't considered being public beyond the court case, but then I realized this was part of reclaiming my story. Set it up, I said. I'll do it. The interview was intense. Questions about betrayal, threats, and family manipulation poured in. I answered truthfully, carefully, and with clarity. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of being judged. I was being heard. The footage went viral. Comments poured in. Messages of support and encouragement. Others shared their own stories of family lies. My story had become a symbol, proof that the truth can survive even the strongest attempts to bury it. But the hardest test was yet to come. My father, released temporarily on bail, tried to contact me. I just want to talk, he said. We can fix this. I didn't respond. Grandma advised, you're under no obligation. Let him act first. We're in control now. I understood. Silence had become my shield, and the world was finally listening. That night, as snow fell softly outside, I realized the video didn't just ruin a Christmas, it rewrote my family's story. And for the first time, I could see the possibility of living without fear, manipulation, or lies. Truth had triumphed. Freedom had been won. Even with my father out of the house and the video circulating, peace was fragile. Old habits die hard, and my family had practiced deception for decades. I realized survival wasn't just about exposing the truth, it was about navigating what came next. Grandma and I sat together each morning, planning carefully. Every step I took, every conversation I had was measured. My phone, once a lifeline, became a weapon of truth, and I guarded it like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. My mother had begun subtle manipulations again. Calls, messages, half-truths I didn't answer most. You have to protect yourself, Grandma reminded me. They'll try to reclaim control. I nodded, sipping my tea. I've learned. I won't fall into their trap again. The court proceedings were ongoing. Lawyers dug into everything, old bank accounts, property deeds, and past contracts. My father's empire, once untouchable, was unraveling piece by piece. At night, I received updates from Grandma. Each one was like a pulse, keeping me in the loop, ensuring I never felt powerless again. Grandma, he's trying to bribe witnesses. Grandma, he's making threats to your sister. Every message reminded me that the battle was far from over. One evening, my sister approached me. This time, her expression was different. I don't want to be involved in his lies anymore, she admitted. I studied her. Then stop, be honest, start now. She nodded, hesitant but sincere. I will, I swear. Grandma, who had been watching from the kitchen, smiled. Good. That's a start. News outlets continued to pick up my story. Interviews, articles, and posts painted a clear picture of my father's manipulation. The public was shocked. People began sharing similar stories, inspired by my courage. It was surreal to see my personal nightmare become a symbol of empowerment for others. But the hardest moments weren't public, they were private. My mother, desperate to regain influence, began texting me at all hours, trying to guilt me. You're tearing the family apart, she wrote. I didn't respond. Grandma leaned over. Remember, you're not tearing anything apart. You're revealing what's been broken for decades. Her words were anchor and armor. One afternoon, as the snow melted outside, I realized I hadn't felt fear in days. Not the paralyzing fear that had controlled me for years. I had confronted lies. I had exposed deceit. I had survived intimidation. And slowly, I began to understand something fundamental. Freedom wasn't just about exposing the truth, it was about living it. That night, I stood by the window, watching the neighborhood lights flicker. The world felt quiet, almost peaceful. Grandma joined me, her presence calm and reassuring. You did what no one else could, she said softly. You forced them to face themselves. I nodded. And now? Now, she said, we rebuild. Rebuild trust, rebuild boundaries, rebuild a life without fear. For the first time in years, I smiled without hesitation. Not because Christmas was perfect, not because the family was fixed, but because I had survived. And survival had given me something I hadn't had in a long time: control. Truth had prevailed, and for me, that was enough. Even after the chaos, even after the courtroom victories, the echoes of the past lingered. I realized truth doesn't erase fear, it just shows you the path forward. The days after Christmas were strangely quiet. My father's influence had evaporated from the house, leaving silence where there used to be tension. My mother and sister were still present, but the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer a child to be controlled. I was someone who had exposed the system and survived. Grandma and I spent mornings mapping out our next steps. Every document, every message, every financial detail was scrutinized. She reminded me that my father's allies could still try to reclaim power. Grandma, they may attempt intimidation, but we hold all the evidence. Me, I understand. Her eyes softened. You've done more than most would dare. But vigilance never sleeps. My sister gradually began opening up. We talked about her fear, her silence, and how she felt complicit without even realizing it. You think I should apologize to the authorities? She asked hesitantly. Yes, I replied. And start being honest with yourself and everyone else. That's the only way forward. She nodded slowly, a flicker of hope in her eyes. The public attention continued to mount. Interviews, articles, and messages poured in. I received notes from people who had faced family deceit and intimidation, thanking me for exposing the truth. For the first time, my story wasn't just about me, it was about everyone who had ever been silenced. Then came the most unexpected moment, a call from my father's lawyer. They want to settle, he said, before the final verdict. They're scared of what's coming next. I frowned. Settle after everything? Yes, the lawyer said. They're scared of public scrutiny. Your evidence is damning. I turned to Grandma. She smiled faintly. Finally, they're seeing reality for themselves. Later that evening, I walked through the house alone. Rooms that once carried tension now felt neutral, almost welcoming. I paused by the window, watching snowflakes swirl outside. The storm had passed, but it left behind something new, clarity. My grandmother joined me. You've done what was necessary, she said, and soon the family will have no choice but to live with the consequences. I nodded. Do you think they'll ever understand? She shrugged gently. Some will, some never will. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you stood firm and now the truth shapes the future. That night, I finally slept without fear. For years, I had been running from the shadows of my father's control. Now I woke to the dawn of freedom. And for the first time in my life, I felt that the holidays could mean more than pretense. Truth, courage, freedom. Even with my father sidelined and the video circulating, the battle wasn't over. Control doesn't vanish overnight, and people who have lived in power for decades fight to reclaim it. The first week of January brought new challenges. My mother, though quieter, tested boundaries daily, messages at odd hours, subtle attempts to guilt me into silence. My sister, still fragile, oscillated between fear and regret. Grandma watched it all like a hawk. You've won battles, she said, but the war of influence is ongoing. I started setting strict boundaries, phone calls monitored, conversations documented, every interaction measured. Why so cautious? My sister asked. Because once they realize they've lost control, they'll try to regain it, I said calmly. I won't allow it. She nodded, understanding for the first time the extent of our father's manipulation. The settlement negotiations advanced quickly. My father's lawyer approached Grandma and me with proposals to avoid further public exposure. I won't negotiate hiding the truth, I said firmly. Grandma squeezed my shoulder. Good, stand firm. Don't compromise justice for comfort. Meanwhile, social media continued to explode with reactions. Strangers, journalists, and advocacy groups praised the courage behind the video. I realized my story had grown beyond my family. It had become a symbol. Comments streamed in. I finally feel seen. Thank you for speaking up. I wish I had your courage. I smiled faintly. My truth had inspired others. But peace was still fragile. My father, desperate, began making small, subtle moves. calls to old allies, attempts to discredit the evidence, quiet threats. Grandma monitored everything. "You see," she said one evening. "Even weakened, he's dangerous. We must remain vigilant." I nodded. "I will, no more mistakes." As the days passed, I found strength in routines, morning walks, journaling, calls with Grandma, conversations with my sister, now honest and open. Each step was a reinforcement of my freedom. By mid-January, the legal proceedings had stabilized. My father's influence had been diminished, and the path forward was clearer. That evening, I sat alone in the living room, looking at the half-decorated tree from Christmas. For years, the lights symbolized control and manipulation. Now, they symbolized survival. I realized that reclaiming my life wasn't about revenge, it was about creating a reality where truth could thrive. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel hope. The journey wasn't over, but I was ready. Because freedom isn't something you wait for, it's something you claim. Even with my father out of the picture and the video released, a new challenge emerged: rebuilding relationships broken by lies. I realized that exposing truth is one battle, but restoring trust is an entirely different war. My sister, once distant and guarded, began opening up more. Late-night talks, tears, confessions. For the first time, I heard her fear, her regret, and her need for guidance. "You were always the brave one," she admitted one night. I didn't know how to follow." I took her hand. "You're learning now. That's what matters." My mother remained harder to reach. Her apologies were mechanical, almost rehearsed. "I'm trying," she said quietly one evening. "I don't know if I can fix this." I looked at her. "Fixing it isn't about undoing the past. It's about being honest from now on. That's all I need." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't respond. Silence became her answer. Grandma guided me through every step. She reminded me to be patient. "Truth takes time to heal," she said, "and not everyone can face it gracefully." She also reminded me that the world outside was watching. My father's actions and my courage had sparked conversations far beyond our family. People were learning from my experience. I received an unexpected call from a news outlet. They wanted to cover a follow-up story: life after exposing family deception. I hesitated. Sharing my personal life again felt daunting. Grandma smiled. "Use your voice, show the world that survival is possible." I agreed. The interview went live. I spoke candidly about manipulation, fear, and the importance of evidence and courage. Messages poured in. People thanking me, sharing their stories, asking how they could find courage themselves. For the first time, I understood that my personal fight had become a movement, proof that no one should live under control and fear. Meanwhile, my father's legal team tried desperate measures. They requested delays, challenged evidence, and attempted to discredit witnesses. I remained calm. Grandma monitored every step. "You've done everything right," she said. "Don't let fear of retaliation dictate your life." I nodded. "I won't." By February, the case had shifted decisively in my favor. My father's empire was shrinking under scrutiny. My mother and sister had started adjusting to honesty, and I felt something new. A sense of empowerment that was steady, not fleeting. The house that once carried whispers and manipulation now felt neutral, almost like a sanctuary. One evening, sitting by the window as snow fell softly outside, I reflected on everything. The fear, the midnight confrontation, the shed, the video, the courtroom, all of it had led to this moment: freedom, truth, and the chance to finally live without fear. Even as the snow melted and the courtroom battles waned, one thing became clear. The hardest part wasn't exposing the truth. It was living with the aftermath and helping the family that survived it find a way forward. I spent mornings with my grandmother, organizing evidence, tracking legal updates, and discussing how to protect ourselves. Every precaution reinforced my sense of control. No one would intimidate me again. My sister had grown quieter, more reflective. We started sharing honest conversations, discussing how our father's manipulation had shaped both of us. "I feel guilty," she admitted one night. "I should have realized sooner." "You couldn't," I said gently. "We were all taught to obey, but now we choose differently." Her eyes glimmered with understanding, maybe even relief. My mother, however, remained a challenge. Her apologies were sporadic, almost strategic. I learned to differentiate between genuine remorse and performative guilt. "You must focus on yourself," Grandma advised. Not everyone will change. Some will resist until the very end. I nodded. I'm ready to focus on my life, not their approval. The video continued to ripple outward. Emails, messages, and social media posts reached me daily. Stories from others about family manipulation, abuse, and deceit poured in. My courage had inspired more than I ever imagined. For the first time, my story wasn't just about survival. It was about giving others the courage to act. My father, meanwhile, attempted one last desperate move. A lawyer contacted me, offering a private settlement in exchange for the removal of all public evidence. I showed the message to Grandma. She frowned. Do not respond. Never compromise truth for comfort. He is desperate. I followed her advice. Silence was my weapon. By mid-February, court proceedings had solidified in my favor. The evidence was airtight, my testimony unwavering, and my father's attempts at intimidation had failed. It was a strange mix of relief and unease. Relief because the immediate threat had passed. Unease because the emotional fallout was still settling like snow around us. That night I walked through the house alone. The Christmas tree had been taken down, ornaments packed carefully. The house was silent, calm, neutral. I paused by the window. Outside, the street was empty, bathed in moonlight. I felt a sense of quiet victory, a calm after a storm that had consumed years of my life. Grandma joined me silently. She didn't need to speak. Her presence reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my actions had been supported, and that the world could indeed change when the truth was exposed. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of control, safety, and empowerment. And I knew something crucial. This was just the beginning of living on my own terms. Even after the legal battles and public exposure, I realized survival didn't mean the story was over. It meant learning how to live freely and helping others who had been trapped in fear. The following weeks were transformative. My grandmother and I reorganized the house, creating spaces that felt safe, welcoming, and free from control. Every step was intentional. Every detail a reminder that we no longer lived under manipulation. My sister began slowly rebuilding trust with me. We shared meals, conversations, and even laughter, something I hadn't experienced in years without a filter of fear. I feel like I'm seeing you for the first time, she admitted one afternoon. Not the person my father wanted you to be. I smiled faintly. That's because I'm finally being me. My mother remained more distant. Her attempts at reconciliation were sporadic and shallow, but I no longer needed her validation. I had learned that survival was about boundaries, not approval. Grandma reminded me daily. Not everyone who harmed you will change. Protect your peace always. I followed her advice meticulously. The public continued to react. Messages poured in from people sharing similar stories of manipulation, abuse, and deceit. I realized that what started as a personal fight had grown into a movement, a beacon for those trapped in silence. One message stopped me cold. I recorded the abuse but never dared to share it. Your courage gave me strength. I stared at the screen. This was bigger than me, bigger than revenge. This was about giving people permission to reclaim their lives. Then an unexpected moment arrived. My father attempted one final maneuver. He called my sister directly, trying to influence her perspective, gaslight her, and regain control. I was prepared. Grandma advised immediate documentation and avoidance. I won't let him manipulate her, or me, again, I said. She nodded. Good, strength is in restraint and clarity. By March, the legal situation was almost resolved. My father's influence had been neutralized, and the family had no choice but to accept consequences. I felt a new sense of empowerment. For the first time, I could live without fear of manipulation, deceit, or hidden control. That evening, as snow melted into spring rain, I stood at the window with Grandma. The storm has passed, she said softly. Now you can finally build your life. I looked out at the world, breathing in the crisp air, feeling the freedom I had fought so hard to earn. Truth had prevailed, justice had been served. And for the first time, I felt the quiet thrill of being fully, unapologetically free. I smiled faintly, whispering to myself, this is only the beginning. I am finally alive. Even after the storm of truth had passed, I realized something vital. Surviving was only the first step. Now came the real test, building a life on my own terms, free from fear, lies, and manipulation. The weeks after the legal resolutions were quiet but powerful. My grandmother and I created routines, rituals, and boundaries that reinforced safety and control. Every morning, the sun streamed through the window, and I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known for decades. My sister gradually began reclaiming her own voice. We talked openly about the past, about the lies, and about how manipulation had shaped us both. "I don't know if I can forgive myself," she admitted one evening. "You don't need to," I said softly. "What matters is that you start being honest. That's all anyone can ask of you now." She nodded, and for the first time, I saw relief on her face, relief born of truth rather than fear. My mother remained distant, still unable to fully confront the reality of her complicity, but I no longer required her approval. My peace was independent of her recognition. Grandma reminded me, not everyone changes. Not everyone can face the truth, but your freedom doesn't depend on them. I took those words to heart, feeling the weight of empowerment settle in my chest. I began rebuilding my own life, new routines, new friendships, new confidence. Every decision was deliberate, every boundary respected. Messages from strangers continued to arrive. Many shared stories of abuse, manipulation, and fear. Many thanked me for having the courage to expose the truth. It struck me. My struggle wasn't just personal anymore. It was part of a larger movement, a symbol of courage, resistance, and liberation. Then came the final moment of closure. My father's appeal had been denied. His power was gone. The family empire he had tried to control for decades had been permanently destabilized. I felt a sense of finality wash over me. Relief, yes, but also a deep, unshakable peace. One night, I sat with Grandma by the window, watching the first buds of spring appear. "The snow has melted," she said. "Just like the lies, now you can grow." I smiled faintly. "It feels unreal." She shook her head. "It's very real. You survived, you revealed the truth, and now you live freely." I realized something profound. Courage isn't a single act, it's a series of choices repeated over time, standing up, speaking out, refusing to be silenced. And for the first time in my life, I felt that I could do anything. Freedom, truth, and empowerment were no longer abstract ideas, they were my reality. Finally, it was time to close the chapter I had been living in fear of for decades. The video, the courtroom, the exposure, it all led to this moment, a life reclaimed, a family reckoning, and a future I finally controlled. Spring had fully arrived. The snow had melted, leaving the world bright and fresh. I walked through the house with Grandma, feeling every detail, every familiar corner differently. No longer shadows of manipulation, but spaces of survival and growth. My sister joined us, hesitant at first, then more openly. She apologized not just to me but to herself. "I want to live honestly," she said. "No more lies." I smiled softly. "That's all anyone can ask, and I'll help you." Grandma nodded approvingly. "Growth takes courage. You've both earned it." My mother, meanwhile, had receded into her own world. Whether she would ever truly change, I couldn't say. But I didn't need her approval anymore. My life, my rules, my truth, these were mine to live. I finally felt weightless, unburdened, free. The story had reached beyond the family. People who had been inspired by the video, by my courage, reached out to share their experiences, seeking hope and guidance. I realized then that my fight had not only been for myself, it had been for others trapped in silence. My voice, my bravery, my choice to expose the truth, had empowered countless others to consider theirs. Even my father, now fully removed from influence and accountability established, could no longer manipulate, intimidate, or control. He had been humanized by fear, broken by exposure, and finally confronted by justice. For the first time, I saw him not as a threat, but as a figure of consequence, a living reminder of why I had fought. Grandma and I stood at the window that evening, watching the sunset. "It's over," I said softly. "No," she replied. "It's only the beginning." I turned to her. "The beginning of what?" "The beginning of living without fear, without lies, the beginning of freedom." I smiled, the weight of decades of control finally lifted. For the first time, I could breathe, think, and act without manipulation or intimidation. I was free to choose my path, guided by truth, courage, and the knowledge that standing up for myself had changed everything. As darkness fell, I whispered to myself, a promise and a reflection. This Christmas they wept, but I finally lived. The video had ruined their holiday, but it had given me a lifetime of freedom. And in that, I found the ultimate gift: peace, empowerment, and control over my own life. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: truth has a power no fear or manipulation can ever overcome. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, it's terrifying, but it's worth it. My story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's been silenced, intimidated, or trapped by the people they should have been able to trust. So remember, courage isn't just an act, it's a choice you make every day. And sometimes, that choice changes everything. If my story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what's the truth you've been too afraid to speak?